Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to, I think this is episode 10 of our Node.js and Express application. In the last video, we set up registration, so we can now go to register and create an account, and it goes into our MongoDB database. Now we want to implement the login, and this is where we're going to use Passport. So a good idea is to create a config file and put your Passport strategy inside that. So what I'm going to do is create a new folder here in our root, and we're going to call this config. And then we're going to have two files in here. One's going to be Passport.js, and then I'm also going to have a database config file. So let's call that database.js. Whoops, fix that. JS. And this is just a cleaner way to do it. We're just going to store, let's say, module.exports so that we can access this stuff outside. And it's just going to be an object with a database value and then also a secret. So the secret, we can choose anything. I'm just going to say your secret. And then for the database, if we go into our app.js file, we're going to grab this right here and put that in here. And I actually want to add the port number, so it's going to be the default port for MongoDB is going to be 27017. Okay, make sure that you have the correct name as well, and let's save that. And let's go back into our app.js file, and we can include that file. So let's go right here and say const config equals require, and this is going to be ./config/database, and now we'll have access to that object. So right here we can just say config.database. Alright, and if we need that connection in any other files, we can just easily bring it in. So what we're going to do now is go to our Passport.js file, and we're going to bring in a few things. So let's say local strategy, okay, variable called local strategy, and we're going to set that equal to require. And in here we want to bring in passport-local, which you should already have installed in the last video. And then we just want to do .strategy. Alright, and to make sure you have it installed, if you look in your package.json file, you should have passport, and you should also have passport local. Alright, so let's go back there, and let's also bring in the user model, just like we did in the other files we brought it into. So we're going to require, and that's going to be .. and then models/user. Okay, we also want to bring in the database connection, which is the config file we just created. So let's say require, and that'll be .. /config/database. And then we also want to bring in bcrypt so that we can compare our passwords. So let's say bcrypt, set that to require. And you want to make sure you do bcrypt.js. I'm sorry, bcrypt.js. Alright, now we're going to have to export all this functionality. So let's say module.exports, and then set it to a function. And we're going to pass in here passport. Alright, so let's implement our local strategy. And if we look at the documentation, it should have some examples of this. So right here, we're saying passport use, pass in new local strategy, and that's going to take in the username, password, and a callback called done. And then we're going to look for the username. All right, if there is no username, we'll do this. We'll return done with false. Then check the password. If that doesn't match, it's going to return done with false. And then if everything passes, it's going to return done with the user object. So let's go over here and we'll say passport.use, and we'll pass in new local strategy, and in here we'll put in a function. Okay, and that's going to take in the username, password, and done. And then in here, we want to match the username. So what I like to do is just create a variable called query and set that to an object of what we want to match. We want to match username to username. All right, and then we want to do our query. So we're going to take our model user and do dot find one. Okay, because we only want to find one user, and pass in the query and then the callback. Okay, and then this function is going to take error and user. So first we'll check for the error. So I'm just going to do if error, then we'll just say throw error. All right, and then we want to check to see if there is no user. So if not user, okay, it's going to look at this right here, and if there's not a user, then we want to return done, and we want to return it with null and then false, and then we can do a message. So we're going to create an object with a message value, 3 S's. And the message will just say no user found. Okay, and if there is a user, it's going to just skip this, and it's going to keep going, and then we want to match the password. All right, so for that, we first need to bring in or call bcrypt. Okay, we're going to say bcrypt dot compare. Okay, it has a method called compare, and that's going to take in the password we want to test, okay, which is going to come from here, which is also going to come from our form. So we want to pass in that, and then we want the actual password hash that's in the database, and that's coming from in this object because we're finding the user, and then we'll have access to the hash password, so we want to pass that in, user.password. Then we want a function, and this function is going to have error and then also a true false value, so we'll call that isMatch, and then we want to check for the error. Okay, then we want to check the isMatch value and see if it's true or false. Okay, so we'll say if isMatch. If it's true, that means that the password matched, and we want to return done and pass in null and then the user instead of false, okay, because everything's all right. Else, then we just want to do the same thing we did here. So I'm just going to copy that, and we'll just change the message here to, we'll say wrong password. All right, and that should do it. That's our strategy. Now you also need to add a serialize user function and deserialize. And if we go over here to, let's see, where is it? Let's see, configure, where the heck is it? Right here, serialize user, deserialize. So let's grab that, and we're going to put this, let's see, we should still be in the module exports. So right here, and we'll paste that in. Let's see, let's tab this over. So serialize, we're going to have this function here with the user, and then we're just going to return null, and then the user ID. And then deserialize, we're going to have a function, and we're just going to find the user by ID. Okay, that's going to get passed in, and then it returns done with the user. All right, just part of the configuration, really. So let's go ahead and save this file, and that should be all we need to do here. Okay, hopefully there's no errors. And we want to bring this into app.js now. But before we do that, let's also bring in Passport. So require Passport. And let's see, we're going to go down. Let's go right below the validator middleware. All right, and we want to bring in the Passport config. Okay, so we just want to require, and we're going to require ./config/passport, and then we want to be able to use that passport value, so we need to pass it in like that. Alright, and then it has just 2 lines of middleware to initialize. So let's see, where is that? See what I mean? Like the documentation, things are just very spread out. Let me just search for init. Alright, so right here we need app.use passport initialize and passport session. So I'm going to grab those and put those in right here. Alright. So now that the configuration is all set, we're going to work on the route, because when we have this login form, it's going to submit, it's going to make a post request to users login. So let's go to our routes and then users. And let's go down here and put a comment here. So this is for the login form, the GET request, and then we want login process. So that's going to be router.post. So it's going to be post/login. Okay. And what we want to do is call passport, but I think, yeah, we need to bring it in because we didn't bring it in yet. And this is where we call passport.authenticate. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Passport.authenticate. And if you want to look at the documentation for that, it's right here. Okay, so post request to login, authenticate. You want to pass in your strategy, which in our case is going to be called local, and then a success redirect, okay, wherever you want to go after you log in, and then the failure redirect, so if it doesn't work, and then also if you want to display a flash message. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll pass in local, that's a strategy we want to use. And you can have multiple strategies if you want to. And then the success redirect, which is going to be slash, just going to be the home page. And then failure redirect, which is going to be /users/login. And then we want to specify failure flash, and that's going to be set to true. Now, one other thing we need to do is pass in the request, response, and next value. So right here, we're just going to put in some parentheses, and we're going to say request, response, next. All right, and that should do it. That should give us the whole login process and use our local strategy. So let's go ahead and save this. And we'll probably have an error at first, but let's give it a shot. So I'm going to submit with nothing. Next is not defined, and that's because that also needs to be passed in here. All right. Okay, missing credentials, which is good. We have nothing here. Let's put the wrong username, wrong password. So no user found. Let me just put a space on that. Right here. Alright, now if we put a user that does exist, we know that there's a user called Brad, and we put the wrong password, we get wrong password. Alright, now before we do the right password, I just want to edit this. If we look at the source code for this message, it has div class alert and then alert error, which in Bootstrap doesn't do anything. We need this to be alert danger, but instead of trying to change it, which I'm not exactly sure how, we're just going to add a class for alert error. So let's go into our public CSS style.css, and we don't even have anything here yet. And let's say .alert-error, and let's set the color to we're going to use the bootstrap red, so A9 4442, and then the background color, which is going to be F2D EDE, F2D EDE. Okay, and then for the border, we're going to set that to EBC CD1. All right, and then when it's a success message with Passport, it's going to be alert-success message. So let's just add that while we're here. I'm just going to actually copy this. All right, and it's going to look like this: success underscore MSG. And then for the color, let's do 3C763D. For the background, let's do DFF0D8. DFF0D8. And then for the border, that's going to be D6E9C6. All right, so now if we go back over here and try this again, now it looks good. All right, so let's go ahead and try to log in. So Brad, and then I'll put the correct password, and we get redirected to articles. So we're now logged in. There's nothing to show us that we're logged in, but we are. And what it does is it creates a request.user object, and we can check for that, and we can enable certain things based on that. Now we also want to log out. So what I want to do is I want to hide this if we're logged in and just have a log out. Now in order to do that, I'm going to set a global variable for the user object. So let's go back to, and close all these. Let's go back to app.js, and we're going to go right under the initialization of Passport. And this is going to be, we're going to create a route that goes for all URLs. And we just want to enable a global user variable. So let's say app.get, and in here we're just going to put an asterisk because we want this for all routes. And let's say function request response and next. And in here, to set a global variable, we can say res.locals.user. And we're going to have this request.user object if we're logged in. And we only want to set this if there actually is a request user object. So we want to say or null. All right, and then we just want to call next, okay, which will call the next route or the next piece of middleware. All right, so now let's save that, and let's go into, let's see where the nav bar is, which is in the layout. And right here we have register and login. What we want to do is only show these if we're not logged in. So right here, let's say if user, because remember we created a global variable called user, then we want to show a log out. So let's say li, and this is going to go to /users/logout, which we will create. Logout, and then we're going to put an else, and then just tab these over because we want these to be in the else. All right, now if we save, the server reloads, and it actually knocks us out. We're not going to be logged in anymore. Every time we reset the server with NodeMon, we're going to be kicked out. So we need to log in again, submit, and now over here, what did I do? Oh, that should be on a different line. See, now if I save and the server resets, oh, it didn't kick us out. Oh, you know why it didn't kick us out? Because we didn't change any of the JS. We just changed the pug code. All right, let's give that a capital L. So let's take care of our log out. So we're going to go to our user routes file, and we're going to go all the way to the bottom, and this will be the logout. So router.get and this is just going to be /logout. Actually, did I put the right URL there? Yeah, users/logout. All right, so logout, and then we'll put our function, and let's say request response, and in here to log out, all we have to do is call request.logout, and then we'll just set a flash message. So let's say rec.flash, and this is going to be a success message, and we'll just say you are logged out, and then we'll redirect. Okay, we're going to redirect to the login page, so users/login. Alright, so now if we reload, we're going to be logged out because we changed the JavaScript file. So let's go log in again. Okay, and we're logged in. If I click log out, there we go, and you can see this goes back to register and log in. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and stop here, and in the next video we're going to add some access control, meaning that if we're not logged in, we don't want to be able to add an article. Alright, we also need to add we want to add the user ID to the articles table when we submit an article. And we're actually going to get rid of this author, and we're going to make it so that whoever you're logged in as, that's going to be the author. It's actually going to be the user ID field. Okay, but we can leave it, we can call it author still, that's fine. Alright, so that's it. I will see you in the next video.